Streaming. Let's go ahead on over and check. Looks like it. It's feeding me ads, so I'm pretty sure that it is streaming fine. I'll go ahead and tell Twitter. I am streaming indie dev. Come build spaceships. Paste. Exciting stuff. All right. So, when we last left off, I was doing some work with Windows, and we were talking about what kind of Windows we wanted. I got some nice boilerplate Windows stuff, hex field stuff from Pinkhair, but unfortunately, I couldn't get it to look good, so I didn't end up using it. I think I have some ideas of what I want the windows to look like, but it'll wait a little bit longer, because it might be good to start with the code. It would be good to have the code that I want working. Although, to be honest, I have to do both at the same time. If I'm going to release a prototype where you guys can build and save ships, I need enough parts for you to build and save, and I also need a way to build and save. So I've got most of the building and saving actually done, but I don't have it writing to a file yet, and that is the next step, so I guess that's where I'll start today. Let's see. We're going to need to write to files, but we're not going to need to write very much, so it shouldn't be too difficult. We're going to need to serialize an entire ship, but the ship's entirety at this stage is just these modules, so we already know how to do that. We got to put it somewhere. Now, this is the part I'm not too sure about, because I know that Unity has some issues with writing to files on different platforms, so this may end up being annoying. But let's go ahead and look it up. Unity write to file. And it says that I can do it. I'm shocked. So you need the system.io, and it's just a standard C# writer. It looks like it'll just automatically write to the proper directory. So that's what we're going to assume. We're not going to try and fuss with a directory at all. I don't know what the proper directory is. I suppose we'll find out. Let's go ahead and create a file, a new script for this. We will call this a universe.io file, universe.io class. And we're just going to make it a static batch of functions mostly, but it is going to have a couple of things. For example, the name of the user. And that's because we want to be able to distinguish between different users, so we don't overwrite their own files. So here's our universe.io. We're going to need system.io and probably system. Now this example is in Visual Basic. Why the heck would it... Oh, I've gone away from Unity and into just the standard MSDN library. Ugh. Let's try again. Unity write to file. And according to this, Apollyon 6K and Pinkhair are both watching at the moment. Chances are they have their audio off. The problem is the directory. Well, public string username equals default. And what we're going to want to do is check and see if there is a file and load when we need to. If there is, we'll want to create a list of all of our users so that we can load up any given user's mods and content as we see fit. So to do that, we're going to need to scan the directory. We're going to have to look up the directory, but I don't know what the directory is, and that's the problem here. It doesn't like have a default directory. Unity file path default application.datapath. So let's take a look. This is probably what I need to make sure I know. Contains the path to the game data folder read-only. Persistent data path contains a path to the persistent data directory read-only. Look at all these read-only values. How do I get a write directory? Streaming asset path, read-only. Temporary path, read-only. Apparently there are no writable paths. Default save directory. No, that's like the Unity asset folder. Maybe I need to do a little bit more research about this offline rather than cluttering up the feed with it. But since nobody's watching, maybe I'll look just a little bit more. Unity save file path. This is what I just found. Oh, I'm sorry. The path is read-only. The folder is read-write. Okay, that's fine. All right, so that's much easier. Let's go ahead and set that up so we can scan through our path and get a list. So public string path get return application.datapath. Now, I think that the persistent data path is only for iOS because the iOS has special rules. Since we're not using the iOS, I think we're going to go ahead and handle it like this. But this may cause us trouble later on. Writing is a real pain in the ass because you don't know what directories you have permission for or any of that stuff. So, yeah. So let's look at system.io and just take a look here. Here's the directory, exposed to static methods for creating, moving, and enumerating. Directory info, creating, moving, and enumerating. Directory not found, drive info, drive type, end of stream, file, file access, file info. Does this get a lot of files? No. File load, file mode, file options, file share, file stream, file system info. I don't think so, though. I'm just looking for a way to look at all of the files in there. Performs operations on string instances that contain file or directory path information. That's not it either. Pipes, ports, search option. Okay, so I want something that uses the search option, but I don't want the search option. Text reader, text writer. So I guess Unity scan for files. Oh, okay, so it is in the directory info. That's fine. So public directory info, directory get return new directory info path. Now this is not the best way to do it, so let's go ahead and protected directory info dir. If dir equals null, then dir equals new directory info path, return dir. And that way we won't waste a whole bunch of time creating more and more directory infos every time we need to read files. So now that we have a directory info, we can get a list of files by simply using the get files command, and that creates a files info. So we do want files info to constantly refresh because it can a file info. What is it? dir.get files. File info. That's fine. Public file info files. We do want to make this regenerate constantly because who knows what you've copied into that directory at any given time. So we'll just scan every time we need to. What are the arguments here? Search pattern. Okay, we don't care. That's all fine. We're probably going to want to use a subdirectory. So we'll see in a moment what the files are by just pasting them here. So files for each file info in files debug.log fi.name. And let's just try and see where we are, because we may be either in this base directory or in resources or anything else, and we should be able to tell pretty quick based on what files we detect. And it looks like a couple more people showed up, like random assortment of letters and on my flow. I'm making a spaceship game, and at the moment I'm making it so that you can save and load your own creations, and that means writing to a file, and I haven't had to do that in Unity, so I'm currently struggling to figure this out. Let's go ahead and make it more obvious by putting in a giant debug.log. Size 30. File check size. Oh, no wonder I couldn't see it. I forgot to actually put it into our project. Brilliant, brilliant. So where is our file check? Hello, random assortment of letters. There isn't really much chat at the moment. It's just you. Huh. File check. Animations, constructions, editor. So we're in the base directory right here in assets. See? So this is where we are when we are trying to write to our files. And that means that we're going to want to have a subdirectory for these files. Now the question is, do I want to put it in the resources directory? Because the resources directory is handled as special case by Unity and will actually be accessible in a variety of ways. So I think that's probably for the best. Let's go ahead and create a new subdirectory here called user data. So what we're going to do is for our path, we're actually going to have our path be the data path plus resources. No, not there. Plus the, what did I call it? User data. Like so. And now what we're going to do is just create something so we know that this actually works. So just like put, I don't really care, a material here, blah, or ball, whatever. And we'll go ahead and see what happened. For some reason, it closed that. That was super weird. All right, well, let's reopen it because I don't know why it closed. Oh, hack R is actually on. There you are. I don't think there's any problem with them going that direction. And hello on my flow. Now we're going to go ahead and actually turn off our Blumpus, our Blumpo, just because it creates a lot of noise, and we don't really need any more noise. There we are. So if we take a look, here's our file check, and there's our ball.mat. So we're in the correct directory. Our directory works. Our directory will continue to work even after we've compiled the entire game. And the key here is that these files in here will be in Unity's extended pipeline. And I'll be able to get at them using the standard resources.load. The problem is they're just going to be text files, and Unity's resources.load text files, that it doesn't really know what to do with those. It doesn't compile text files or anything. But that's actually an advantage because we want it to be human readable text just in case people want to play around with their own external editors. So what we're going to do is load up a list of all of our users. So public string users. And this is going to be protected. Protected string users and public string users. Get if users. Yeah, come on. My fingers stopped working. If users equals null, then we want to actually load them up. Otherwise, just return the users. We should probably change my mind. We're going to always check because you might paste users into, might paste new files in or might stream new files in. So we don't want to accidentally not detect them. So every time we look for users, we'll go ahead and look fresh. And the way we do that is we just build a new string. Make it a list, I guess. No, it's going to be a string. Equals new string, and then it's going to be the files.count. Or length, files.length. Files dot. No. There it is. I don't know if I need this. I don't think I do. Can't remember. And then we'll just go through. So for int a equals 0, a is less than u dot length, a plus plus, u equals files a dot name. But we only want the first half of the name. So whatever we end this with, we're going to want to get rid of that. For now, I don't know what the ending is going to be, so we'll just do this. And then return UA. And that'll give us a list of all of the user files that we're trying to get. So down here in start, we can look up how many users we've got, and we can load up any given user at any given time. Obviously, that's in the future. We don't have any saving yet, so we don't have any loading. So we're going to go ahead and just prime the pump here and test our saving function. And the way we're going to do that is using system.io.write text writer. Here it is. Do we use a string writer? Let's just take a quick look at the recommendations. And they recommend using file. Okay, that's no problem. So file f equals new file. Or I guess it's not a new file. How do you create? I guess file just gets referenced via static functions. Yeah, okay. So write all text creates a new file, writes a specified string to the file, then closes the file. If the file already exists, it's overwritten. That's what I want at the moment. So we're going to go ahead and drop in our path, and then our contents, we're going to say blah. Let's go ahead and our path is not enough. We have to also put in our username, which is going to be our username. And let's go ahead and put in a .txt just because that way we'll be able to open it. And then what we'll do is we will say for each string u in users debug.log found user u. See a random assortment of letters? You're missing my just devastatingly exciting stream in which I try to write to a file. So here it is, and you can see it says blah. And if we look over here and search for our user found user, there it is, found user default.txt. So what happens if we remove the .text here? Can we still preview the file? That's interesting. I'm not sure that it actually wrote. Try it again here. Huh. I guess we'll add in the .text for now. Later on, we'll figure out how to fix it. But that means that we're going to want to take the substring of the name, 0 to -4. I think that C# can do that. I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, it looks like it can. Let's try it out. No, it cannot be negative. What a cheap implementation, C#. All right, random assortment of letters. It'll still be very, very boring then. Found user def. Found user default. Found user default. Found user default.txt. Okay, there's clearly something screwy going on now. Okay, so we do have default versus default.txt. I think. Yeah. So we did write a file just called default, but apparently it takes a little bit to update it. But this screwed up. Well, I guess we can just combine this. I just didn't want to because it has a call in it, and that makes it a little bit slower if I do this twice. Found user default. Sounds good. Let's go ahead and make sure that we're not creating any weird spam. No, we're not. Good. If we look over here, it looks empty, but behold, we hit F5. Control R, I mean, and there it is. Blah. So what we're going to do is we have to store all of the user's various files or various ships and crew members and universe states inside this file or inside a bevy of files. I don't really know what's best yet, but I think that it's going to be okay to, for the moment at least, stick everything into a single file. That does mean that we're going to have to have an array of entries in this file. There's a lot of ways to do that. We could manually parse the various array pieces and that sort of stuff, but we already have an array workaround class. So we can just print using our array workaround class, and that's what we're going to do. So for now, let's go ahead and add in some details here. Public static universe IO live, and down here we'll go ahead and say live equals this, and we're going to go ahead and not do that, but we're going to do this found user stuff just to keep us aware of what's going on. And this is actually going to be put in awake rather than start. And what we're going to want to do is allow for a lot of static writing. So public static void save ship or save ship. We're going to need to keep them clearly labeled as whether they're ships or whatever. So for that purpose, we're going to pass in a string ship serialization, or just serialization. Oh, that was interesting. Did I screw something stupid up? Don't know. So we pass in the serialization, and we're going to want to write it to the file. But here's the thing. We don't want to write over the file as it exists. So we need to keep our files in our head. And so up here, we're going to go ahead and create a new class, public class universe or player file. And this will just be a very straightforward system.serializable class that we will be able to keep our various data points in. And we're going to want to have a ships, like so. To be honest, it would be better if rather than an array of strings, it was a dictionary. But unfortunately, dictionaries don't load and save properly in Unity. They just never got around to serializing them, and I don't feel like writing a custom serializer. So how are we going to know what the name of each ship is? Well, it's going to have to be stored in the string, which is a little bit heavy-handed. Alternately, we could do it so that the first entry was the name, and the second entry was the ship, and the third entry was another name, and the fourth entry was a ship. Both of those are obnoxious. Should we just go ahead and make an annoying... Yeah, let's go ahead and make a workaround. Yay, workarounds! Key pair workaround. Public string key data. And this is also system.serializable and can be easily serialized by the built-in serialization system. Why dictionaries can't be serialized, don't ask. I don't know. So this is going to be a key pair workaround, ships. And that way we'll know their name. So down here, we're actually going to take the string name and string serialization and turn that into a key pair. This actually should be a list, shouldn't it? Yeah, it should. So when we save the ship, we're going to need a new key pair workaround. KPW equals new key pair workaround. And there's no reason that we don't take in those arguments. This is a class, so... That was an interesting way to auto-correct me into gibberish. Thank you. Why is this blue? That was super weird. Whatever. These new key pair workaround name serialization. And we're going to drop that into our file. So down here we've got a username. We're also going to need a public player file user file. And we can fill that in by loading it if it already exists, but we'll get to that a little bit later. So here we'll just say live.userFile.ships. We'll want to scan through and add a ship if we need it. So public bool a public int index of ship. What's the fastest way to do this without a whole bunch of whatever? Public int index of ship. String name. Full int a equals 0, a is less than ships.count a plus plus. And then we say if ships. What's going on? My fingers aren't working right today. If ships a.name, that key equals name, return a. Otherwise, we're going to return -1. And we may as well have a public void add ship, key pair workaround ship, int index equals index of ship, ship.key, and then we say if index is less than 0, then ships.add ship, else ships index equals ship. And that way we won't add the same ship over and over and over. We'll probably have to split these off into their own file at some point. It's not great practice to stick multiple classes in the same file. I was originally going to make them structs, but then I realized that I kind of needed the added functionality that classes can give, so I made them classes instead. And so when we say save the file, save the new ship here, we're just going to say userfile.addShip, and then we'll pass it this new workaround. There we are. And we're going to want to instruct it to save. So save and then pass it the file. Pass it nothing. There we are. So public static void save. And this will save the active player file. Isn't that nice of me? So the way we're going to do that is we're just going to use JSON utility and paste to it. So we're going to use system dot file dot write all text, and the path plus why is that capitalized? Oh, live.path. Although there's really no reason to make it live. Static. There you are. Write all text path plus our name. So that would be plus username, live.username plus .text. And then the contents, which is going to be JSON utility.toJSON, and then the user file. Like so. Now I think there's an error here. There it is. Because it was not behaving. It was like refusing to autofill or auto-detect anything. So there we go. We've got save, ship, and save. And save ship automatically calls save. So over here in the ship, when we load up here and we serialize and deserialize, we're going to go ahead and tell our universe to save our ship. So this is in awake right now. We're not going to want to put that in awake. We're going to want to put it in start. Otherwise, it could matter which one's happening first, you know? So we're not even going to bother destroying any of these parts anymore. We're going to serialize it. Now, serialization gives us this string, but it may not be just a straight string. Oh, it is. So I get this straight string back from serialization. So we're going to go ahead and tell our universe IO to save ship and our name plus our comma, our serialization. And that should be all we need. Shall we see if it works? No, it didn't work. Ship.start is already defined. Oh, because it's inheriting from iCelestial body? That can't be right. Do we have... Oh, we have another start. No. Did I get the wrong... Brilliant. There we are. All right, so now we should have no more errors, and we'll go ahead and try this on for size. So in theory, we didn't turn Blumpo on, and it didn't work. Let's try that again. Hey. All right, so what have we got here? If we go up to our proper directory, we're in Resources, User Data, and there we are, default. But it still says blah, and I think the reason for that is that we may still be telling it to say blah. No, we're not telling it to say blah. Let's go ahead and put a save here. Debug.log saving user data file. Let's go ahead and make that gold so that we don't lose track of it. And we'll say debug.log saving changes to ship plus name. And this way we'll know whether or not it's actually being called, because it's possible it's not getting called. Hey, Evil Luigi in 6 of 10. I didn't see you come in. We're trying to finish up the serialization so that I can release a prototype where you can build ships. You won't be able to do anything with them yet, but you'll be able to build them, and it'll save them properly, and you'll be able to grab other people's ships and all that stuff. It's an important first step. So here we are, saving user data. But even though we said to save the user data, oh, it did save. It's probably just the refresh. There's this issue where this doesn't get refreshed properly, so there we go. It does save the data properly. So it says that the data is empty, which means that we're returning it wrong, but it tries very hard to save it properly. So here's serialization. We take the parts serialization, we get serializations to array, and then, so where is it going wrong? Because this should be what it says. Stuff like this, like lines and lines of this. Serialized n components. Serialized 4 components, there it is. And then I print out each of the serializations, which you saw. And then I say that the parts serialization is, oh, would you look at that? It's another situation where a string array isn't getting serialized properly. Well, it's a good thing that we know how to deal with that, because we already have a well-defined array workaround class. Oh, well, we do have to set up the serialization as well. All right, let's try that out. Boom. Let's see how it worked. Yeah, there. That's what I like to see. Look at these wonderful escape sequences. This is exactly the kind of crap that I hate, because we would not have these, not nearly so many, if we didn't have to use this array workaround. Unfortunately, we do have to use this array workaround. I may switch over to a different serialization method later. It's just a matter of going through and finding all the references to JSON utility and switching them out with whatever I want. But for now, that's pretty much what I wanted to see. Zargi is shocked that I'm shocked that it's not serializing properly. So this is the entirety of the Blumpo. It's mostly hash marks. But this sequence here is everything we need to get the specific blueprint of the Blumpo. So we don't need to save the textures, we don't need to save the meshes, we don't need to save the individual modules or anything like that. It's just a bunch of references to the various pieces and where they go. It's very straightforward and it works very well. It's much smaller than we would otherwise get. Well, Zargi, I went out of my way to upgrade to 5.5 because it has a better JSON utilities function. And I was going to just serialize using the JSON utilities function. But unfortunately, I've had to do a lot of nesting to get around this fact that arrays don't serialize properly. And that means that I've mostly hash marks. So I'm not rolling my own serialization code, really. I am telling it to serialize only specific things, though. And that's an annoyance here. So in an ideal world, we would not have any nesting. This would be a flat situation. And we wouldn't have to worry about any of these hash marks because it wouldn't be strings within strings. It would just be a giant flat surface. You know, it might be worth trying to make that happen now. We've got end-to-end serialization. If we stop serializing halfway, then the only contents that should be serialized are going to be the only nested serialization elements are probably going to be the subsets for the individual rooms, and I can deal with that. Demic says, have you tried Newtonsoft for JSON serialization? No, I haven't. If it's free, I could try it, but basically, since I'm going to be distributing this to everyone, I can't use anything that is restricted. Requires any kind of licensing. But even so, it's not like this makes any sense. It's just something dumb. But what we can do is we can go back through all of our serialization methods and link them up. Because right now what we're doing is we're serializing each part into a string and then attaching that string to the part above it. And to some extent, that's unavoidable, but we should still be able to flatten it some. 6 of 10 says that they want to have they want to have someone to teach them how to code, and that is definitely an easier way to learn, but it's also a much more expensive way to learn. Demic22 says that it's free to use and redistribute. Let's see, Newtonsoft. Oh, it's a separate library. Yeah, I'm not too worried about it at the moment. One of the reasons that JSON Utilities is giving me headaches is just because I had to use it in tiny pieces, and I really should be using it end to end. Well, that's actually one of the strengths here, Zargi, is the way that we handle inheritance. Because all of these things are not prefabs, it's just a named reference. If we look at this in detail, you can clearly see that what we've got is some references in here to variations on an actual object. And that's pretty straightforward. Let's go ahead and try and clean this up a little bit. I can get rid of the majority of those hash marks if I stop sucking. So let's do that. I strongly recommend sucking less. So one of the questions we've got is, why do we have so many hash marks? And that's because we're using a lot of array workarounds. So what we really want to do is not use any array workarounds, because what we can do is, instead of serializing at that point, we can leave those as arrays. And the easiest way to hunt for array workarounds is to open up the array workaround file and find references. There we go. So we got a couple here. Let's skip out on the ships and let's go into the deeper ones here. The ship component mixin. So this is the same class that we're defining it in. So our changes are already an array of strings, but we actually built a new object that would handle these better than an array of strings, and that is the new key pair workaround. That said, I don't feel any strong urge to do that at the moment. We'll leave it as an array. But the key is that we're going to go ahead and make this array not flat. Zargi Zargi says inheritance with custom-based C# classes, not mono behaviors. Maybe I'm asking for too much. I don't really know what your problem is at the moment because I'm not doing the same thing and I haven't really stopped to think about it at all. But the serialization I'm doing is I'm serializing name references rather than any kind of fundamental reference. So basically all I'm doing is saving the name of the prefab. So what we're doing is we're creating this array of strings here, and then we're serializing it and returning it. And what we're going to do instead is we're going to return it as an array of strings, because that's what it is. So just delete these and return an array of strings. Like so. Now the problem is we've got some thing that expects that to be a string rather than an array of strings, but that's okay. We can go ahead and look that up. Here it is. And change it to an array of strings instead. 6 of 10 says, what does it mean to serialize something? Well, you have an object in memory, and you want to save it to your hard drive so that when you load it up again next time, it will load up exactly the same as it was in memory. Serialization normally happens automatically. When you hit save in a scene, it serializes everything so that you can open the scene again later. What I'm doing is a subset of serialization that just saves named references so that I don't have all of these entangled references to things inside the project. It's a very lightweight way of doing things, but it does require that Unity handles a lot of the serialization for me. And deserialization is when you load something that was serialized. So mixin serializations is currently a list of strings. We're going to make it a list of string arrays. There we go. Boom. Cannot implicitly convert a string array to a string array. So here we are. We say the array workaround, and we don't need the array workaround anymore because we're going to be returning an array of arrays. Custom equals an array of arrays. So custom equals mixin serializations.toArray. And we'll just go up and change custom to be an array of arrays, like so. 6 of 10 says, so from local memory to files. Normally, yes. Normally, it's from some kind of working memory to a file. Oh, well, we're not trying to load up an array workaround, are we? Hold on. Look through the loaded catalog for a part name. And we're going to want to load up an array here. So string array mods or changes equals. Oh, we've already got it in custom. So that's all we need to do. We don't need this. We'll just do custom.length is greater than 0. Then we get the component mixins, and we say if mixins length does not equal, so give me a second to think this through here. So what we have is an array of arrays, and the first level of the array is for the catalog component itself. So down here, when we get our ship component serial, when we load this up here, what we're going to need to do is get all of the changes. So first we say, well, if there are any changes, then we'll need to actually think it through. So get a list of all of the mixins. So then what we'll do is we will also get the list here. So if mixins.length does not equal custom.length, then there are different lengths, and it's not going to work out. But otherwise, what we're going to want to do is find the subarray. So the string customization equals customizations index. And then we say if there's nothing, then return, and otherwise we're going to want to serialize it. Yeah, spell that correctly. There we go. And that should do. Hey, Sarden. We're on our way towards having a really nice serialization system. And then you'll be able to do all sorts of you'll be able to do all sorts of ship creation, and we'll be one step closer to having a released version of this, which would be nice, don't you think? Why is 6 of 10 getting violent? Let's go ahead and take a look at our file. We cut the number of hash marks in half. There are still too many hash marks, and I can go through and stop the array usage even more. So we'll go find the other array workaround references. Here are some. All right, so what we do is we just serialize the mixin serialization. There's no use of an array workaround here. The only use of an array workaround is in this custom. Oh, I have to reload. Hold on. Because I changed a whole bunch of stuff, so obviously the factors have changed. Here we go. So now ship is the only place where these remain valid. The array workaround gets the part serializations array, and then what we do is we return the JSON utility.toJSON for the part serialization. But we no longer have to do that because what we need is something that's a lot simpler than that. We just need to return the array of strings. Well, to be fair, I think that that's fine. That one is okay, because that one's the final deserialization. That's the final serialization. We're going to work with that later. And it looks like, yeah, those are the only two places left where it's referenced. So those are the only two places where we should be getting hash marks. I'm not sure why we've got 3. We should only have 1. Well, 3 is okay for now. Later on, we will make this a little bit better, really reduce it down. So you might be wondering, what's next? Well, what we're going to do next is duplicate the Blumpo, move it a little bit, and call it something else like the Blumpo1. Why? Because that should allow us to see whether or not both ships get saved. So let's take a look. Reload. There we are. Oh, look at that. We got 2. We got 2 Blumpos. So here is the first Blumpo, Blumpo 1, and then we got the other Blumpo down here somewhere, Blumpo. So in this method, what we can do is we can create any number of unique ships, save them with their own unique names, and then they'll be saved. And if we update them, whichever ship is named the same thing will get saved again. But what we need to do is load that file so that we don't keep deleting our progress. Erost says, damn, I'm late, hello. Zargi says, what do the hack marks signify? Well, the hack marks are escape characters. So if you take a look, I guess I should zoom in so you can actually see what I'm writing. Sorry about that. If you take a look here on the screen, I'll show you. When you say that string such and such equals quote, quote, that's fine. But what if I want to say a string equals a quotation mark? Well, that doesn't work because it's considered to be part of the same string, so it doesn't escape properly. So what you have to do is you have to escape it so that it knows it's supposed to be a string. But what if I want the string to actually say quote, quote, quote? Well, then I've got to escape it here, and escape this, and then escape it here. And there we go. So the hacks are basically saying, can you put quote marks in these quote marks? And the triple hacks mean, can you put a quote mark inside of the quote mark that's inside the quote mark? So they're basically syntactic spam that comes from serializing serialized things. Now what we need to do is load up our file properly. So down here, what we're going to do is during our load section, which is right here, we're going to actually load up the file that we need to load. So we're going to check for the file first and make sure that it exists, and then we're going to go ahead and load it if it does. So if u equals our username, then we want to load from that file, and we will go ahead and say user file equals JSON utility dot from JSON user file, or user file. And then the string, so the file that we're currently on, and that would be currently going through users, not files, though. We should probably do this in the file system. So for each, we don't actually need this. Let's go ahead and change this to be for each file info u in files. Found user file.name, so found user file.name. If file.name equals username plus .text, then we found the file we need and we're going to load it up. So user file equals JSON utility from JSON, and then read from that file. What's the fastest way to read? I guess we'll have to use the specific read function here. Yeah, read all text. And then file.path, file.fullpath, full name. Yeah. That should do. So we're going to go ahead and see if that works. And what we're going to do is output the user file. So if user file equals null. Rust says full scripting today. I'm not sure. Usually I go about half and half. But I'm doing some pretty important scripting. This is the last major component that's needed before I can give this out to people so that they can play around with it. Unfortunately, the UI is still really rough, so I'm not sure I want to actually give it out. Even if I can, we'll go ahead and figure that out. So user file equals null. Then debug.log error invalid user file for, and then the name of the user. Else debug.log found plus user file.ships.count plus ships belonging to plus username. So what we're going to want to do No. Namespace user file. Player file, sorry. There we go. So now we're going to want to check our project console for signs that we loaded up files. Found 2 ships belonging to default. So now here's the question. If we were to take one of these Blumpos away, like this guy here, and just delete him, would we still load up and save 2 ships? Well, first things first, we need to make sure that this happens earlier than the ship save, and it does, because this happens in awake, whereas the ship saving happens in start. See? So it's definitely going to happen in the right direction. And so we want to make sure that we still have 2 ships, even when only 1 ship still exists. And it looks like it. Found 2 ships belonging to default. Let's go ahead and take a look at the file itself and make sure that it still says 2 ships. There we go. So the Blumpo 1 is still saved, even though we have long since gotten rid of it from the scene. And that's a good sign. Oh, my mic is starting to misbehave. Let's make loud squeaking sounds while I try and fix it. And that's a good sign. We have a ship saving system that doesn't require our ships to be in the game world. It keeps track of all of our ships. We can save and load with whatever sort of preference we'd like whenever we need for any given ship. But right now, there is no way to load from the file. All we can do is save to the file and check that there are ships in the file. So we're loading up these serializations, but these serializations are just arrays of key pair values. They're not actually ships. Converting them back into ships is not too hard, but it does require us to have a couple of pieces of information that are not currently in the file, namely what catalog we can find the blueprint in. Now, if we wanted to, we could save the entire blueprint in our file here, and we wouldn't need to try and find the blueprint in the prefab system. And that's probably better in the long run. So rather than using prefab ships or anything like that, we would store all of the values that we would need to load the ship right here. The advantages of that are that it'll be very small and lightweight. The disadvantage is that any modded parts that are created have to be saved to the database because they're not going to be saved with the ship. So this is a constraint that means that modding will be slightly harder, but on the other hand, it means that everything else will be much easier. It might be time for me to stop scripting and let this bake in my head for a while. And instead go back and do some modeling. What do you folks think? Do you guys want to see anything in particular? It looks like I've got a few viewers, so some of you probably have an opinion, whether you'd prefer 3D stuff or more programming. It's the little red face says 15, but there's only like 5 people in chat. I wonder whether that means I've got 10 people that aren't logged in, or whether that means there were 15 people over the course of the whole stream, or what. I don't really know how Twitch works. Six of 10 is back. Zargi says, shouldn't they save it to the database anyway so they can use it elsewhere? That's true, but prefabs are something you can easily change on the fly. And I can see people doing things like putting in primitives and stuff and then just getting confused and not saving it to the database and saying, why am I getting this error? Well, we'll see. Shaggy Man wants programming. Rust does not want programming. Zargi wants programming. You guys are all grumpy today. Go in every direction. 6 of 10 likes modeling. So that's a 50-50 split. Not a very great indicator of what I should do. The problem for me is that coding is, in this case, going to get a little bit tight. That is, I've got to work on some very, very nitty-gritty stuff. And if I do it without letting it simmer and planning ahead a little bit, it's very easy to completely bork it. Because let me tell you what the next step in my coding is. The next step in my coding is deleting the concept of a blueprint from the game. And that's a fairly big step that can go awry very easily. So I think I will go ahead and do modeling, even though a fair number of people want me to do coding. Just because I already did an hour of coding, and I can go ahead and do some modeling now. Grind, grind, grind. There we go. So this is where we left off with our hub, but we're gonna have to fix all of it. We're gonna have to completely discard this entire operation and try again. Let's go ahead and turn on our display here. So what we're gonna start with is I'm gonna start by modeling in airlocks because I don't have any at the moment. So here is the default structure. Let's go ahead and pull it on over and then apply our location. And what we're going to want to do is put we're going to have an airlock here. Now, because we're kind of assuming that we're going to have a gravity of some kind, we're going to have the airlocks on the side rather than on the top or the bottom. Now, we have two options. We can either make it lopsided or we can make it symmetrical. Now, lopsided airlocks make some sense just because it means that half the room can be given over to cargo, suits or whatever. But this is a fairly large space. If we take a look at how large it is, we put this lady inside this box. If we assume that this lady is a little bit smaller than a spacesuit, we can see that there's plenty of room for spacesuits lining up against the wall, or even in the center of the room. And we can just have our airlocks be symmetrical here and here. On the other hand, having asymmetrical airlocks is probably more realistic because normally speaking, they've only got one exit out to space. In fact, this is kind of unrealistic because normally they wouldn't even have... Maybe this is the right thing to do. Maybe we should just add doors to the side and make this an area where you can have, a hallway that splits off, rather than trying to make the airlock an inline airlock, because inline airlocks don't make a whole lot of sense. So I guess what we'll do is we'll start by putting in some doors that go off to the side. And now we have a couple of door bases here. There they are. Let's pull this over. And we're going to want to apply location, rotate 90 on the z-axis. There we go. Now, for simplicity's sake, we'll make it the same ultra-heavy door. Now, has this got a mirror? There we go. So we're going to want to get rid of some of this, like up here. My mirroring apparently screwed up pretty bad, didn't it? Interesting. There we are. And that is what we need in order to make the doorway right. Let's go ahead and delete the side because we don't need that anymore. So we'll just delete these two edges. Bang. That should do. And we'll need to delete this edge down here. Deleting that edge might be too much. Just raise it. There we go. There we go. And now we just have a simple box structure. And that box structure will let us get away with having a hallway that comes out off to the sides. So we'll just save that and see how it looks in our game world. 6 of 10 says, wouldn't this ship dock to a station? Yeah, you wouldn't be using the airlocks proper for docking, though. That would have a specialized docking airlock. The airlock would be mostly used for going outside. But the thing here is, these ships are pretty early on, and there's no guarantee you'd have a station, at least not a station worth having. So it's worth knowing what's going on and having enough. It's worth being able to do it yourself without needing to have a special station docking port be your only way to do things. Let's go ahead and put the proper materials on and see how it looks. The doorways are not very pretty because they were never supposed to be exposed. I should probably change the material they're made out of. Six of 10 asks, are you planning on letting the players build stations? If so, what new or different parts would have to be used? So yes, I am planning to let them build stations and facilities. The key component of the reason why this spaceship game has spaceships in it is that the missions you can take on a spaceship are a lot more flexible than the missions you can take on a space station. So a lot of these spaceships are going to be going out there and doing science or support missions, things that require very expensive arrays of stuff. Like, you need these really expensive sensors to do this. And mounting those kinds of sensors on a space station and planting it there would be super expensive. Mounting them on a spaceship, you can use those sensors in 85 different locations and just fly around all day. So the big reason that I'm starting with the spaceships is because they are the economic drivers of this game. This is the this is what will make your space travel worthwhile. The ability to go and do science experiments and stuff. All right. That looks a little bit odd. That corner. Six of 10 says maybe one mission tree for a ship is to gather materials and stuff for building a station. That's not exactly how the idea works, but it's pretty close. Basically, the way that your economics work is that you have a specific number of economies. An economy at tech level 0, an economy at tech level 1, and an economy at tech level 2. Facilities and space stations can increase your economy level by burning higher level economies, and it's very, very efficient. So, if a facility can turn one tech level 1 economy point into 15 or 20 tech level 0 economy points, but only a ship can go the opposite direction and create tech level 1 economy from tech level 0 economy. So that's the basic idea. Zargi asks if he'll be able to build a Death Star. I won't be creating parts for the Death Star because they're copyrighted, but there's no reason why you can't make a mod that is, Death Star parts. You will certainly be able to build those kinds of large ships. There's nothing holding you back from that. But you'll be making them out of massive parts. You won't be, arranging every room. What's going on here? Do I not have the right piece? Eros says it sounds complex. It's actually not too complicated. I probably just didn't talk about it right. Each thing, you have different technology levels, but rather than researching technology, you have an economy that works at that tech level. And the idea is that for each tech level, you're going to want to improve your economy over time. By launching spaceships, you can turn a tech level 0 economy into a tech level 1 economy, or a tech level 1 into a tech level 2, slowly. Little points here and there. With a facility, you can do the opposite. And so the idea is that the two will work together, because the starships will burn massive numbers of tech level 0 parts in order to create a tech level 1 economy, and then your facilities will burn a small amount of tech level 1 economy for a massive number of tech level 0 stuff. And in that way, you'll be able to create a nice cycle. All right, next step, we're going to go ahead and build ourselves the airlock. Now, the airlock has the same basic construction. But what we're doing is the rear is going to be our, I guess it's going to be the front. The front will be our actual airlock. No, it's going to have to be the rear. Let's make it the front. There we are. Just because this is popping out, which isn't actually right for the interior door. There's certainly no need to have mounts, so we'll just go ahead and delete those. And for this exterior face, what we're going to need is something that feels like an airlock. I'm thinking we'll go with something spacey. Something space age sort of feel. Like this. And we'll want to go the opposite direction, in rather than out. Well, that's the key here, Alexandresk, is you're not actually using any more parts. The Death Star will be built out of a few extremely large parts, just like this ship is built out of a few extremely small parts. The number of parts in a very large ship won't really be very much higher, and we'll be using LOD to make sure that those parts don't have an unnecessarily high load in terms of numbers of verts on screen at once. So 6 of 10 says, will the player be able to customize logistics and stuff for the ship? There's a complicated situation there because I don't want to make it too complex. I want to make it as simple as possible. Mostly you'll be optimizing your logistics when you build the ship. And during operations, it'll be mostly focused on what your people are doing. And Eros says, how are you planning to animate those airlock doors? And I'm not. I'm not at the phase where I'm going to be animating anything yet. So I'm just going to not animate them. And we will go ahead and completely replace this part once it's time to animate them. Now, I do have animatable components, but they take an annoying amount of time to actually build, so I'm not going to make it animated today. Where the heck was that? That was weird. Well, let's try this again. Shaggy Man asks, are the doors hinged or retractable? They don't animate, so it doesn't actually matter. But I'm sort of thinking that they're probably going to... they probably want to pop out now that you're talking about it, because it makes more sense that they would come out rather than go in. I wasn't really thinking too hard about it since they're just placeholders, but you're right, they probably should be out rather than in. Yeah, you're right, Shaggy Man. They're not very realistic. Well, because they are symmetrical, having a door that's small enough to retract into the bulkheads means I'd have to have a door that splits down the middle, which isn't really recommended at this tech level. So I think that what I want to do is pull the door out and make it so that it will seem like it's going to swing open, and I can even add in some sort of hinge sort of thing in a moment. Although the problem is the hinges are going to want to be symmetrical, and I don't think I want them to. Maybe I can give it like a gull wing hinge. Alexandresk says LED can make you deal with too much geometry but still have a lot of draw calls. Is it kind of a voxel, not familiarized? So it's a lot simpler than you're making it sound. This ship here is built out of parts that are this size. The space stations that we would be building, the giant Death Star space stations, would simply be built out of parts that were fundamentally larger parts. So when we put together a ship of the size I'm talking about now, the crew compartment might be able to have like 2 beds in it. But if you stick in the Death Star's crew compartments, it's going to be, a mile wide, and it's going to have 80 beds or whatever, 8,000 beds, however many it happens to have. And most of those will never be rendered because we're going to just use LODs to not draw interiors and stuff. So fundamentally, there's not a whole lot more parts involved. It's just that they're bigger. And they have a much higher maximum vertex count, but we will be using LOD to keep the vertex counts under control. And we'll be spawning in and out complex elements as we need them. So for things like, posters on the wall or whatever, they're not going to be rendered until you're inside the ship and near that room. Hope that was clear. There we are, our super, super basic airlock exterior, which is mostly placeholder. Oh, and I extended the wrong side of this, didn't I? God damn it. All right, so now we're just going to unwrap this face here with the door on it. Oh, I'm sure that sounded lovely in the mic. And then we're going to unwrap the face itself. And let's apply some materials. So this is going to be hull, and this is going to be heavy hull. Here we got some glass, some more heavy hull. There we go. Let's see how that looks. Let's call it something here. This is not a hab straight. Uh-oh. Did I accidentally... I might have accidentally stolen the only hab straight that we had on the in the file. That was dumb. Well, that's fine. We can recreate it pretty easily here. So this is a hab. This is an airlock. Oh, I already have an airlock? Oh, did I call this an airlock? This is an X junction, or a T, whatever you want to call it, plus junction. This is an airlock. One of the things I just realized is that that's probably too long. Let's go ahead and shrink it down some. It doesn't need to be that full length. So we're going to go ahead and grab this and shrink it down to 3 meters? 4 meters, probably safer. There we are. And we may as well polish some of the visuals. No, that's the big feature of this game, is that you can scale the parts, and you also have larger and smaller parts. So we're not going to be making Space Engineers style large ships. We're going to be using parts that suit the ship. And that's also an advantage for modders, who will be able to create whatever kind of parts they want and then put them in the game world without worrying too much about using them on other classes of ships and stuff like that. You will be able to combine classes. I mean, if you wanted to have a spaceship that was the size of, the Death Star and then attach this little airlock to it, you could, but it wouldn't really make much sense. Grind. Well, I mean, you can make whatever custom parts you want. There are certainly going to be ship sizes between this and Death Star. Well, we still have a habstrate in the other file, so that's probably what I'll go ahead and hijack and grab it. But first, let's go ahead and switch this mesh over into the new X junction. There we are. There we are. What is this, a nose? Oh! Yeah. I got the parts backwards. I am super brilliant like that. Alright, so I can immediately see that we have an issue where the taper is causing us to have some annoying white lines going through here. There are a variety of ways to either fix that or just deal with it. I think the easiest way is probably to perform a cut here. And perform a cut here. And then just designate like so. Designate these faces as hull rather than heavy hull. And re-unwrap. Something like that. Maybe I should go the other way. Probably should do the same thing on the bottom, but we'll do it later if we need it. And the last thing I wanted to do was make sure that we could actually see these handles, which we can do simply by marking them as heavy hull. Saving, going over here. Now, I honestly don't like the boxiness of this. I think it would make a prettier visual if our exit was not so crappy. So let's go ahead and assume that we're going to want to have a slightly less crappy interface. Now we're going to go and open up the other model, the Corvette's default, and unhide everything, and grab this default scale here and move it on over into this file. There we are. And now we've got our default back. So this airlock turned out to be a waste of everyone's time, so it's gone. I'm going to duplicate this. Ah! God damn it. Too many undos. There we go. Move this back some. Here's our airlock. Apply location, and we're going to go and make this a much more stylish ship part. And I think that the best way to do that is to have it be more asymmetrical than it has been. So we're going to go in here and we're going to apply that mirror modifier specifically so that we can make it less symmetrical. And we're going to go ahead and, can we cut all the way across? Yeah, we can. So we're going to just cut all the way across and then get rid of the front, like so. And let's go ahead and hide some of these because they're distracting me. And what we're going to want to do is put in an airlock, and then we're going to twist the whole thing. So that should be fun. We're going to use the circle. We're going to make it have 12 points maybe. And bring it forward. Rotate it on the x-axis like this. And we're actually going to go ahead and punch it out into its own mesh just for a minute so that we can use some mirroring to help us edit the door in particular, just because it's a little bit faster if I use mirroring. So what we're going to want to do is scale up like so, and then we're going to want to delete half of it and just start to move these meshes so that they make a door more the kind of size that I want our door to be. Like this. Can extrude. And flip. And now this door, because it'll be off-center, we can recall it into the side. We can have it roll back into the bulkhead. There should be enough room, but let's go ahead and shrink it just a little bit more to be sure that we have enough room. Like so. And if we bring over our little avatar and put her in this door here, you can see that she can easily fit through, even while she's full of, a puffy suit. She could fit through, but it might be a little bit too short. So let's go ahead and raise it up a touch here, and we're going to want to add in like a window, maybe. Let's go ahead and try that. So 6 of 10 says, I don't know if my PC is not crap enough to run this game. Neither do I, but it's actually very lightweight in almost every sense. These parts are not as heavyweight as they look. They do have too many materials at the moment, but I'm going to bake that down in the long run. But these parts are all very straightforward and simple in comparison to what you might get. And I do a lot of optimizations, like I hide interiors and stuff. So obviously I don't know what power your computer is at, but this isn't any more heavyweight than the piloting demo that I released. So if you can run the piloting demo, you can probably run this. 6 of 10 says, when's the next tech demo? I have to finish putting out the ship loading and saving capabilities, and that means I've got to do the ship blueprints. It's probably about 6 hours of work there. I might do it off screen. Basically, it can be released whenever I get off my ass. But I need to have it so that you can build and save ships. And right now, the interface for doing that is really kind of buggy. It's not a very fun interface at the moment, and I'd like to try and think of better ways to have that interface work. And at the moment, I just can't think of a good improvement. So there's that issue. Well, hold on. If it's going to swing aside, then what we need is actually a hand access port rather than a wheel. Now look at that. Nice of it to add in a bunch of random crappy materials that nobody would ever want to use. Great. Thanks. That's interesting. Why did it bevel like that? Oh, that's weird. Why is it doing that? That's super weird. I think that must be because it's in mirrored. So I'm going to go ahead and unmirror it and move it in. Join. 6 of 10 says, does it require whack install? Don't know. I don't think so. Oh, no. Not at the moment. It'll probably only ever require that for having mods that are on the official mod database. And the reason for that should be fairly clear. Alex Drensk says, try to triangulate the corner face. I'm not sure that you and I are on the same wavelength here. Six of Ten asks, any plans to release on Steam? Don't know. Not anytime soon, for sure. I'm going to be using indie marketplaces like itch.io for now, just because they don't have any sort of significant control. You know, they don't try to exert control over the people who try to use their platform, so it's a little bit easier to do updates and stuff on them. Alexandrisk says, yep, was crap. Don't know what you mean. I'm hoping you're not talking about me. All right, that should be more or less what I'm trying to do. Maybe. Wow, that is a rough face I've just put in, isn't it? This untidy corner that I've created is really pretty awful. Ah. Boom. There we go. And now I just need to bridge these last two pieces. Oh. And get rid of this face. Don't need it. So, how are we going to integrate this box? And I think that what we want to do is copy here and bring it out a little bit, and then extrude. Thanks for being half inverted. That's random. Oh, I know what the problem is. I'm not getting the bottom elements. Still half inverted. Great! Legacy of using a mirrored mesh There we go, like this. Now, Control Z, bring it in so that it's not too tall, like so. And bring it in a little bit here. There we go. And now let's just merge it up. We don't need to be very careful because we don't actually care much about the topology here. We don't need this, though. I'm going to delete that. There's not going to be any animation or anything, so as long as we don't have any totally egregious verts, we're fine. That's totally egregious. There we are. So we got some noise right up here, some bad stuff, but for a placeholder, that'll work okay. Now the only thing we have to do is set up a handlebar so that our users can easily navigate across this. So there we go. And another handlebar somewhere else later on. We don't need it at the moment. So the next step is we're going to go ahead and unwrap everything and put in some materials. Oh, look at that. We've got these awful 0.001 materials. I really wish there was a way to tell Blender not to ever do this. Please reuse materials. When you clone something, I obviously want to have the same materials. I'll change it if that's wrong. All right, so materials. This is heavy hull. Oh, I guess I have to... I'm worried that I have random things misallocated. This is glass. This is heavy hull. This is heavy hull. But I may randomly have some wrong elements. We'll see shortly here. Let's take a look. 6 of 10 says maybe a window above the bar. That's not a bad idea. Let's go ahead and see how it looks here, and then we can talk about refinements. This is still just a prototype. Like, I'm just mocking it up to see if it doesn't, if it looks decent. So obviously the materials are really bad. Let's go ahead and switch them out a little bit here. There we go. That wall looks really blank here in the environment, but I see I've got this issue here where I've got some misappropriated materials, so we're going to go ahead and set those all to hull. And I think that the problem is that we just have the wrong UV map for this component. I'm going to unwrap it again, but I'm going to go ahead and put a window in over here. see how that looks. Grind, grind, grind. Grind, 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 grind. Grind, grind, grind. Okay. Well, this is in the way. It doesn't really go very well right there. I should probably just move those elements forward a little bit. I'll do that later. For now, we'll just assume that those aren't cutting into it. I think that window is too big, and I also don't like the setup. So let's go ahead and try that window again. There we go. Let's see how that looks. Now the beveling is really awful in the back there, so we're going to need to fix that up. And this really looks pretty bad, so we're going to have to fix this up. Let's go ahead and there we are. That should make it real dense, but we're going to want some stuff here that will give us some appearance of merging in fairly well with our other objects. So we're going to take these and we're going to make these into standard hull. And then we're going to go ahead and just grab here. And no, that'll look terrible. We'll see how it looks as just one strip of standard hull. I get the feeling I'm not calculating normals out. Let's take a quick look and make sure that we are properly importing calculating. Thank you. Grind, 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 grind. But we are going to have to do one more change here. We're going to have to make this face a little bit less really huge. No, I don't think I'm doing windows very well. I think I need to rethink how I'm doing windows because all of these windows just look really awful. Maybe what I'll do is create some kind of bar of some sort, some kind of bar that crosses them. I don't know whether this is going to be any better. I'm striking out in the dark here. Marginally. All right, well, as far as this goes, it doesn't look too bad. I'm thinking that's good enough for our current pass. This does need one more thing, though, and that is it needs a light because it's really dark, and I don't want it to be dark. An airlock needs to be quite bright and lit to know, so that you know quite clearly that this is where you go in. So we're going to go ahead and increase the intensity to 2, like this, and change the color to kind of a yellow. Perfect. Put this down here so that we can still see the glass as glass. There we go. And that is our airlock. So what do you folks think? Does that airlock seem like it's a decent enough prototype? I kind of like the idea of it going backwards. I'm not sure. I had originally planned for it to be even more aggressively tilted. I think the basic idea might be pretty good. I'm not sure about the actual execution, though. Prototyping stuff is kind of hit and miss. Well, what if we moved the whole array back a little bit? To move it out here for now. And then move this guy up. And these guys up. Gonna have to get rid of this guy. That's fine, we got plenty of fuel. Well, yeah, definitely all of these parts are temporary, but as you can see, I'm modeling them kind of in real time in front of you guys. So that entire part took less than an hour, and that's including, took more like 40 minutes, and that's including an entire start over. So it's not a bad way to do your prototyping. Let's see if we can get a decent shot with the game camera. Game camera. There it is. So now what the heck, we will go ahead and just put a new camera in. I'll just take a picture of it here. The reason I didn't want to is because it's got that icon, and that icon is kind of ugly. Of course, so is this guy. I'll go post this on Twitter. Getting close to the end here. If you have any more questions or comments, now is the time. Because I'm coming close to the end. Streamed some spaceship serialization and creation. Now have hallways and airlocks. Screenshot Saturday. Paste. No! Screenshot Saturday. There you are. I guess I should go and delete from YouTube the video of my streaming. Delete. All right. So 6 of 10 asks, will there be planet surfaces to go to? I have it planned. I have all the technology I need to do it, but it does take a lot of coding, so not real soon. I'm going to do space stations before I do ground level facilities. But that said, there's nothing wrong with the idea. It's just that it has to be coded, and I'd rather get the core functionality online first. All right, well, I'm going to leave you guys because I am so hungry that my stomach is rumbling. I'm not sure if you can hear that. And I will see you on Wednesday if you want to watch more, or next Saturday if that doesn't work out for you. Have a good one. No, where is this?